Kenneth Niels Jensen was born December 30th, 1908, at his parents' cabin in Independence, Idaho. The eldest of 9 boys, Kenneth's childhood was a short one. By the age of 5, he was working alongside his father, and by age 8, he was driving teams of horses in the fields. When he entered school, he was only 5 years old. The one-room school building housed grades 1 through 8 with only one teacher. The next year, the grades were divided and a new teacher, Mrs. Murphy, taught the first 4. By the second grade, Kenneth still wasn't able to read, but the teacher let him stay and drilled phonics into his head. He was an avid reader for the rest of his life. Along with his farm duties, Kenneth maintained good grades. When he graduated from the 8th grade, the nearest school offering the 9th grade was in Burton. Students from Independence normally had to go to Rexburg, but arrangements were made for him to go to Burton. Since he was not from that district, the teacher told him that he could not receive any help, but was on his own. In the 10th grade, Kenneth lived with Dora in Rexburg and went to Madison High School. For his last 2 years, he went to Rick's Academy and graduated from high school there. There wasn't any money to start college, so Kenneth worked at home and for neighbors during the harvest and winter. In 1927, he again enrolled at Rick's College, and in 1929, graduated for the second time with his 2-year certificate in elementary education. In September, Kenneth got a job in Manan and began his 38-year teaching career. In the fall of 1930, Kenneth became acquainted with Esther Dugan, who taught 5th grade right across the hall. For the next 2 years, they taught together and dated off and on. On November 26, 1932, Kenneth and Esther eloped to Dillon, Montana, and were married. At the end of that school year, Esther stopped teaching. Then in August of 1933, they traveled to Utah to be sealed in the Salt Lake Temple. In January 1934, their first child, Laurie Helen, was born. That fall, they bought a small rock house where they lived from then on. In 1936, Kenneth was promoted to the position of principal of the Manan School. In order to qualify for this, he took Esther and Laurie to Moscow, where he attended summer school. Although he was a school teacher, Kenneth never forgot his love of the farm. In 1938, he bought a 40-acre farm 3 miles west of town, where he raised wheat, potatoes, and alfalfa. Since the farm work began in the spring before school ended and ended in the fall long after school had begun, the term vacation was not in his vocabulary. In the course of time, 2 more children were born, Gordon Kay in February 1938 and Donald Niels in July 1942. During World War II, the rationing of common essentials such as gasoline and sugar made life more difficult, but they were willing to make the sacrifice for the country. Following the war, Esther returned to teaching. The state of Idaho raised the education requirement for a teaching certificate to 4 years. Both Kenneth and Esther continued teaching while attending summer school at Rick's College to obtain their bachelor's degrees. In 1956, Kenneth graduated from Rick's for the 3rd time. Esther got her degree the following year from BYU. As Kenneth raised his family, he carried on many of the traditions which his own parents had done. Without a television, he would entertain the children with music. Kenneth played the piano, harmonica, guitar, and the accordion. Kenneth was also a very active member of the church. In 1964, he was called to serve as a financial clerk, where he remained for 20 years and 5 bishops. All 3 of their children graduated from Rick's College. All 3 served missions, and all 3 went on to be teachers. Laurie taught typing at Bountiful High School. Gordon teaches Portuguese at BYU, and Donald teaches sociology at Rick's College. In November 1982, the entire family gathered in Manan to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. 10 years later, a similar celebration was held for their 60th. The last winter of Kenneth's life was a very cold and snowy one. He spent many hours shoveling his driveway and clearing the path for the postman. He was proud of his accomplishment and took pictures. The last pictures that he had taken were of the lilac bushes in front of his house. This film was still in the camera when he died at his home, June 9th, 1993.